I think I'm going to start charging so that people can come into our Zoom on the back end just to watch the panelists dance. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night, wherever you are around the world. Today, we're going to start with some news. There's been like yesterday and today in the tech world, lots of news coming out. We're just going to hit a couple of them. We're going to go to therapy, tech therapy, not talk therapy. And then finally, we're going to talk about the 6 friends that I have on this call from around the world and how technology has helped us to connect more than ever before, but has also maybe made real connection more challenging than ever before. We have a great panel, great things to talk about. Welcome to the Rundown. I really do have to figure out why there's that delay there. I feel silly staring into the screen. There's like a 3-second delay from when I press the button from when the video goes. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to see you all here. I'm happy to welcome my friends. I'm going to go in reverse order today. I'm so happy to have Mr. Bill Davis here. How are you, Bill?
I am great, David. So much joy to be back again. I've missed for a couple of weeks, and I missed you guys.
And I love, love, love having you here every single week. I also love having my brother, Tony Mobley, join us here. How are you, Tony?
I'm great. Glad to be here. Excited about our conversation this evening.
Absolutely. And is it next week? I'm coming on your show again, right?
Absolutely. You're coming on next week, and we're going to talk about eCam.
We are going to talk about eCam.
Also, we're not going to limit it to that if you want to talk about other things. So.
Uh-oh. Don't tempt me. Hey,
it's up
Dave.
to you.
How are you, sir?
I want to come on and talk about stuffed animals. That's what I want to do.
Stuffed animals, really?
Tony had me on years ago, and we had a nice conversation, but I think the subject never comes up. So I thought, we should have a chat there, Tony.
Have you seen the movie Ted?
Yes.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, right. Teddy bears. And here's someone that we all love. Miss Lois, how are you?
I am fine. And did you know that this is the first day of spring, supposedly?
I did actually know that.
Yeah.
Because I worked
and I am so ready to have spring. The highs were in the 50s last week. Next week, they're going to be in the 70s, maybe 80. I am so ready for this.
Amazing. We actually had the most beautiful day down here. It was fantastic. And I'm wondering how my dear friend, this guy, if you want an example of how technology has helped people connect, it's this guy here, Leo Mindell. How are you, sir?
Very well. Very, very well. I don't understand what the 50s and the 70s mean. I can tell you it was 17 degrees here in London today. It was beautiful.
That's
driving
Celsius,
around.
though, right?
And I went for a bike ride along the River Thames, along the towpath of the River Thames, and it was gorgeous today.
Beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Love it, love it, love it. And finally, my friend from across the, not the country, not the ocean, Tamara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And you sound fantastic on that mic, by the way.
Okay, great.
I'm just saying.
I was like super worried.
All right. Hey, let's talk about some news. So a couple of things that are actually connected. The first one, they both have to do with AI. There was a lot of AI news this week. In fact, OpenAI just announced what's it called? Not auditory. I'm not remembering the word. Spoken word agency.
Mm-hmm.
Up until now, they've had just, with manual input agency, they're now just announcing this. Lots of things have been going on. The two pieces of news that really jumped out at me, one is how people are using AI to trick AI or to trick technology. So this is a 21-year-old guy who is actually being investigated by his university right now. But he has been offered jobs from lots of companies, and instead is going out on his own because he has figured out how to help coders use AI to cheat in tech job interviews. Now, just as quick background, during the pandemic, interviews, especially for tech jobs, went from people schlepping in and going into the office to these online on Zoom interviews. Now, many of those interviews have been replaced with AI interviews. And so there isn't necessarily even a real person on the other end of the call. But either way, real person or not, they have this guy, this Chung-In Roy Lee, has used AI to game a popular virtual interview platform used by tech companies. And because of that, he received all these internship offers, which he declined because he wants to start his own company. Have we crossed the Rubicon? Have we jumped the shark here? We're now using AI against technology itself. We're using AI to trick technology. Go ahead.
Morality aside, I laughed when I read this article because I'm someone who's like looking for a job. And I don't know if you've done this recently, but oh my goodness, the steps that you have to go through to get to no one. And so when
to get to no one, right?
And I have connections. I use all of the proper techniques. I've been doing this for years, but it's so fascinating to me how much work, how many assignments come with a job, how long they can keep you waiting, how you're like, you can't get to a real person. So I read it and I was like, morally, I know this is not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was like, good for him, because if people cannot have, when we're talking about jobs that pay a lot, where they're looking for people for, very specific tasks, and you can't give someone at least your short list, like the time of day to interview them. Even now in Zoom, a lot of people you're given a phone call interview where basically you record yourself in Zoom answering questions they have given you.
Right.
I'm like, so I laughed. I was like, good for you.
I continue to believe that if AI can do it, it's probably not worth doing.
Right.
When it comes to asking a question, if AI can answer that question, the question probably wasn't worth asking of me.
I had an experience decades ago. I got hired by a local bank that was getting bought by a bigger bank. And the task that I was just facilitating the professionals there in terms of assessing the two pools of talent. So if there was an assistant vice president of something and there was another one at the other bank, they were trying to figure out a fair way to determine who should get the job in the merged bank. And one of the things that I came away understanding was when you have a huge hiring process or reduction in force process like that going on, the beginning stages are ruthless. I mean, literally, it's who has this many more points than that points as they assess everything, because there's so many people coming in, they can't rationally look at each person as an individual. They just have to do categories. So if you had a keyword in and somebody else didn't have the keyword in, you were gone at that early stage. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as these huge online hiring things try to figure out who gets those very limited opportunities to talk to a human being. And I'm not at all surprised with this news that professional hiring people are just trying to figure out algorithms so that they're not faced with 20,000 applicants for a job. And how do you even manage that?
Yeah. And the 20,000 applicants who are usurping, getting around having to be good at being interviewed because they're using these tools to get around. Sorry, Lois, I stepped on you.
That's okay. It seems like this is an old problem, and it's not. I mean, the tool is new, the AI is new, but the problem is old. And a lot of it, think about when you were a kid. And were you good at a subject, or were you good at taking a test? And so the people who get the job may be perfectly competent and able to do the job, but it doesn't mean that they're better than the people who didn't get the job. It just means they're a better test taker, or in this case, they can write better AI code.
Yeah.
Here's what my concern is, because I think that when you are mass applying to things, then I think using ChatGPT to make your resume stand out is fantastic. Like, honestly, if you are in that beginning phases, Bill's right. You have to have things stand out. What is interesting about it is that it is an old problem. Like Lois said, we've always had to kind of tailor our resumes and figure out where we're applying. But the one thing that is drastically different is the nature of work. If every quarter a major company can say we're below our targeted approach, so we're going to lay off a percentage of our workforce, and then in the next month hire back again, then I feel like we've gotten to a point where we are taking the humanity out of the entire process of work. So I kind of feel like that's the different piece here, where people are really trying to figure out, like, what does work mean in a corporate environment if every quarter we're like, oh, we didn't meet our target. Like, you can't find any money because your CEO is making 600% more than your lowest worker. And I'm not someone who believes that CEOs should not make a lot of money. I do think they should. But I think that that's one of the things that has been the downside, is it's really taking humanity out of the entire process. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of applications just to get to that other point.
Yeah.
I have
So
a
there's also
childhood.
go ahead.
I have a childhood
David,
friend
then Leo.
who, yeah, he was head of HR for a major corp, and it's called ATCO. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's nationwide, and they support industry, and they make work camps. Oh yeah, it's a big deal. Well, he was in the job from digging the ditches early to working his way up to the corner office, and he knew the whole company inside and out. And his job was both to fire people and to hire people. And he did not like when they said, we're going to have this machine that looks at all the resumes and only spits out the ones that qualify. And he was never participating in the process of setting those qualifications. They were set by engineered types, people who said, well, there's these criteria we're going to use, and we've decided what they are. And he would say, criteria? I can tell you in 5 minutes of talking to somebody whether they are the criteria. I don't even have to look at their resume, because I know what they say to me tells me they're a professional and they actually understand the job. Other people, like me, never actually had to successfully have an interview, because all the work I ever did since I first got out of school has been referred, because I make myself known in the community as a guy who knows these things. And then they go, oh, you got to talk to Dave because he knows all about that. And I've been well paid and I've had really fun jobs, but it was referral all the way. And my online, what do you call him, pen pal from Quebec, who is way across the country from me, was an HR professional himself. And in Quebec, they have a rule that every employee's salary has 1% set aside for training. And his job was to match people with the training and make sure they were elevated up the corporation. But he was also there to negotiate with unions about this sort of thing and that. So the computers are not going to get past the actual fundamentals of it. They're never going to pick the right guy. And you really do need a person at the other end who ignores the criteria and just looks at the people.
Yeah.
But I don't know if corporations are going to get there, because they have answered to the stockholders who don't know how to run a company. They just know how to invest in them.
Right. Leo, go ahead.
Very quickly, the first thing on this I realize is that I look in the UK, we have our driving test. When you have your driving test, you nowadays you have to do a written exam, and the written exam for a long time there has been various different programs to teach you how to pass your written exam, and this is going to be a similar point. It doesn't mean you can drive a car because you can answer the questions, and I think it's going to be very similar on this. They will use this to weed out, if that's the right word, but as a person who's interviewed and hired many people, I don't even give it 5 minutes. I give it about a minute in the room, and then you know if you're going to get somebody or not, if they're the right people.
I agree 100%. I know almost right away when I'm hiring someone if this is the right person, and it's I wish there was a way to quantify that, or to to be able to express to others, but
Well,
It's
one of the highest paying jobs I ever had was a referral, and I did not want to do the work. But I priced myself way up high, thinking if I'm too expensive, they'll find somebody else. And they went, "Oh yeah, we can do that." So 2.5 years later, I built a thing for NATO. So yeah,
there you go. There you go.
That's how that goes. I got paid, and I didn't like, but it was a fun job.
So tangentially to this story is that that Zoom announced today, not today, 3 days ago, a huge Zoom AI companion update. I mean, just ridiculous, with 45 new innovations that they announced, including AI enhancements for Zoom Meetings, Zoom Phone, Zoom Team Chat, Zoom Docs, Zoom Contact Center. They announced Zoom Drive. They announced Virtual Agent for Voice, AI intent routing capability. I mean, so much. It actually sort of blew my mind a little bit. How much they squeezed into that. Now, this isn't all out. We can't play with this all yet. But the idea here is that it's also agentic. So the idea is that it can take actions on your behalf, from tasks to orchestration, automatic clip generation, writing assistance, calendar management, personal AI coaches, custom avatars for Zoom clips. This is something we talked about last week on Zoom Test Kitchen. We'll be unpacking this, by the way, if anyone wants to join us tomorrow, 3:00 Eastern. But you can create a custom avatar of yourself now, not a farm animal, but a custom avatar of yourself for Zoom clips. I mean, there's so much in here, and the question that I continue to have about Zoom's play in AI is they do what they do so well in meetings and webinars. It scares me a little that they want to be everything for everyone. They want to be the new Google Docs. They want to be the new Microsoft Teams. They want to be the new Slack. They want to be, and so is AI going to save them, or is this exactly what Zoom needs for its next move? Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I think that part of the thing that you have to think about when you think about Zoom is that what the pandemic did for them in terms of giving them sort of this drive to be able to help everyone and to be in position. It was the right time. They had the right software. They started out giving it to everyone for free. And so in order to continue to be the leader, they feel that they have to innovate and create more and more and more so that they can stay ahead. Um, Alice Lindsay often talks about the fact that because they did what they did at the time of the pandemic, they were way ahead of everybody else. And so I think that this is more of the same in terms of them wanting to be ahead of the curve in terms of everybody else.
Yeah.
So everybody else is trying to play catch up.
Here's I don't know if this is the problem, but here's a potential problem. Another piece of big news that came out today is there was a huge shakeup over at Apple. The head of Siri is no longer the head of Siri. They brought someone else in. There was a lot of move. In fact, the guy who was in charge of Vision Pro is now in charge of Siri. There's a whole shakeup over there because they announced a whole bunch of stuff before they should have, and it is not fully baked. And now they've got whatever on their face, whatever that saying is. And I worry again that Zoom is it may be throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, and they have something that sticks really well already, and I want them to focus on that. Go ahead, Leo.
There's a couple of things on this really quickly, but first I need to just say to Tony, your show this week was unbelievable. absolutely. Your show with Sky was absolutely one of the best I've listened to for a long time from both of you.
Yeah, but
Amazing.
I haven't been on till next week, so
Okay, well, then we'll lift the bar even higher. So the main thing I'll say about this, though, is that I was around at the beginning of what they called new media and where we are now, and everything, they stuck the word new media on every single thing they could label it on. I think there was even probably tins of baked beans with the word new media on them. And now we've got tins of baked beans with the word AI in them. And I think the reality is people are putting the word AI on every single thing that they can, even if it doesn't mean it or need it. The other thing that Tamara talked about last week on this show was she was talking about the innovation, and if you don't innovate, you fall away. And this is a reality. The reality you were talking about at the time, that why Skype doesn't exist now, and this is where Zoom is sitting there. Will these things make the difference? Do these things, are they going to stick? I don't know. David, you've got a really good point about that. However, if they don't, there are going to be people walking in their boardroom saying, why haven't we stuck AI on the toilet paper in the washrooms?
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree. I think that it reminds me a lot of new media, and it reminds me of the beginning of reality television, where people were like, everybody was running around trying to figure out how to do the next best thing. And I think that on the one hand, they have to do that, and I love that about them, and I love Zoom. I'm curious because I don't think any of the AI is the next best thing. I think it's on its way to figuring out what it is, and that's the exciting part, and I'm excited about it. I'm also getting a lot of fatigue as someone who loves AI and who loves Zoom. I'm starting to like just be tired every time I open up a new thing and there's a new AI, as excited as I am about it.
Yeah. Lois, just unmute because we can't hear you. And then Lois, after you, Bill.
Okay, so thinking about all the new things that have come out, I don't think that it is trying to be everything to everyone. I think they were trying to get something for everyone, because the people who use Zoom are a broad spectrum of people doing different things. So we're in Zoom meetings. Okay, that's easy. We're doing webinars. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I'm the one who needs docs, and maybe you're the one who needs something else. So all of their things don't have to apply to the same person. Hopefully some people will need them, and enough people will need a particular thing that it will move forward.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Bill.
One piece of this generative AI stuff is, to me, averaging. And I understand that averaging kind of lifts both the bottom and kind of also compresses the top. It's a little bit like audio compression in that way. Everybody can do stuff that looks much better than a lot of people used to be able to do. But in that averaging, it makes people who are distinctive, I think, more valuable. And the big challenge for me as I approach how I'm going to deal with AI is to get something out of it that doesn't look like what everybody else gets out of it. Because I'm so tired now of the mid-journey look. And oh, look what they did. They threw that prompt into something and they got the same art that everybody else is getting, that I'm seeing all over the web. So how can I figure out a path to make what I do stand out? Because that's the only thing that's going to separate you and get you hired if you're looking for a job, what we were talking about before, in this big crush. How do you do something that everybody else can't do?
Right.
That's the ticket to me.
Right. And I mean, you could argue that the guy we talked about in the first story, that he was using tech in a way that other people weren't, in order to trick, but you're right. It's those of us who are able to find not just unique, but powerful ways, world-changing ways to use this technology and make it our own. That's what's going to stick.
Yeah, particularly when a GPT can write sentences for everyone that makes you seem reasonably thoughtful, reasonably educated, the structure is much better. Then how do you find out who has those special thoughts that mean more than just what the generative stuff can crank out all day long?
Yeah.
You have to be a good editor.
You do. You have to be a good editor, and you also have to be good look, the amount of time that I spend not just crafting the prompt, because my workflow is I say to AI before I prompt it, I say, create the perfect prompt. Then I type the gobbledygook that I was going to prompt it with in. It then spits out a much better prompt, which I can then edit a little bit. But then I put that in. But even with that, the amount of time that I spend revising and iterating on that and editing the final result is it's a tremendous amount of work and time. But I get a much better product.
There's also a downside that I'd like to address for just a second, which is that when these things can massage a message into better than it would have been, the people who are not particularly moral and sophisticated can use these same tools to take a fringe idea that might be destructive and package it in something that sounds perfectly reasonable, when in fact the core idea is not perfectly reasonable. And I worry about that a lot.
There was a report I saw, I think yesterday, and forgive me, I can't place where it was, but what it was doing was proving that you can get one of these tools, I don't remember which one it was, to tell you how to create a bomb. If you say, how do I do this? It won't tell you. But if you massage your own language and you say it, I wonder if a something that could help me do, right? If you craft your prompt in such a way, you can get these tools to do nefarious work for you. Absolutely. I think
I'm just removing tree stumps. That's all I want to do. Big tree stumps, gigantic tree stumps.
Right.
One of the things I heard this week that was really interesting was our guy, Nate B. Jones, again. He was talking about using these tools and how as a writer, it is that generative AI is a mirror of what you put into it. So as you continue to iterate, and I've noticed that in my own, as I've talked more to ChatGPT in a more casual way, than what it's giving me back is much more in my voice. And that's what I thought was really interesting. So you're right. If you put in a bad voice and you're a bad actor, then you're going to get a mirror back of that information. And it's going to generate towards the user.
It's interesting.
The sad thing is, what if you get more clicks that way by being the bad actor than you do being the good actor? That's the scary part for me.
But junk in, junk out also. Today I needed a 200-word bio. So I took the bio from my website and I popped it in, and it put out a 200-word bio, but it was missing some key stuff. And then I went back to the original. I realized, it's missing the key stuff because I don't even have it in the original. So, thank goodness it actually found the junk that I was putting in, and it told me that. All right, let's move on because I need help. Please help me.
We're here to help.
Help.
Here's my problem this week. I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are living in my house, 1 of whom is gone. And I tell all of them, get off your phone, no phones at the table, da. When they're not there, I'm the one on my phone at the table. Sometimes when they are there, I'm the one on the phone at my table. Has this all just become too addictive? Is there a chance?
Yes.
Where does your anxiety come from?
Hope? Is there
What are
hope?
you anxious about? What makes you anxious enough to have to refer to your phone all the time?
For me personally, it's I can't have unread messages. That stresses me out tremendously.
And you feel you have to respond when it sort of summons you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work on that.
I know. That's why I'm into tech therapy. That's why. But
That's people pleasing, not a tech problem.
Right. But
we always tell you, David, it's you. It's not.
Thank you.
Tech.
Okay.
not
Well,
the tech,
show's over. I'm
Not
the
the tech.
problem.
No.
That's it.
But
We're done.
Yeah.
Tony,
I
come
have
to my
heard of a
rescue
lot of
here,
people-
please.
Tony.
Well,
Go.
I just wanted to share this with you, with all of you, that when my adult sons were living with us and we would go out to dinner, the rule was the first person that pulled out their phone had to pay for dinner.
Ah.
And guess what? Nobody pulled out their phone.
I've actually heard that
So,
before.
so,
It's a great
so
idea.
I ended up being the one, of course, to pay for dinner. But it
I
was
just
an
love that.
interesting it was
Just
an
love that.
interesting thing because we would go out to dinner and everybody would be on their phone, and we implemented this rule, and that took care of that.
I
Yeah.
heard that
But I
when
bet you pulled out your phone to pay for the meal.
right.
But
I've heard
that's at
that
the end.
when you go out
No,
with
I pulled out
friends
my
or
wallet. I didn't use the card. I mean, I used the card. I didn't use
I've
my
heard when you
Apple
go
Pay
out
or
with
anything
friends
like
or,
that.
or colleagues, everyone stacks their phones in the middle, and the first one to give in and take their phone has to pay for
Yeah,
the
it's
meal.
a
I've heard
double
that.
dare kind of thing. Yeah,
Right,
right.
right.
But you got to do that to yourself, right? If you don't have someone in the house staring across the couch at you and saying, "What are you doing?" You got to resist needing to stop the movie to find out if that actor worked with this actor. I mean, you don't need to know that right now. You can sort of put it aside. And if you can't remember it 90 minutes later when the movie's over, it wasn't really that important.
So
And I
David,
think some of what's going on is you're trying to keep up with stuff, and it's other people's stuff, not yours. So
I have a solution for you. It's a fairly simple solution too. All you have to do is get a little box with a time lock on it. You put your phone inside and you lock it for however long you decide that you want to eat dinner. 30 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever. There you go.
There's an actual thing.
Mhm.
What's it
Yeah.
called? The Brick or something? The Brickit app?
Mhm.
I don't know
Yeah.
what it's called. There's an app that actually will brick your phone, not brick it technically, but it will shut your phone down and it won't let you get back in for a certain period of time. That's
I've-
just my worst nightmare, Leo.
I have a solution for you, David.
Okay.
This is a really easy solution. What you need in your life, David, is one day a week when you shouldn't be using technology.
Hate you.
There should be a day a week in your life, David.
You know what he's doing? He's
David's dying.
he's bringing the
The others
Jewish
made it
guilt
realize.
is what he's doing.
I am. You should turn it off, light a set of candles, and not touch it again until you light another candle.
Tech Sabbath.
There you go. That's what you need to do.
that's the
That's
timer.
what you need
That's
to
the
do.
timer.
That is the timer.
People
It really
have been
is.
doing tech cleanses. I've heard of people doing that. They're taking a period of time and saying, no, just no. It's a hard
think
thing
that-
to do.
I think one of the ones, Bill, is to not take your phone upstairs to the bedroom.
Mhm.
If you do that and leave it downstairs, just that break is amazing. The difference it makes to, I think, for people.
It may
Everybody
seem
will have their
strange,
what
but
works
my
for
phone
them.
is never
Yeah.
in my office. My phone is not in my office. Everything I need for my office is in my office, and my phone is upstairs. So I don't have it nearby to bother me.
Huh.
And I can answer the phone on my computer if I need to. But
I will say
no.
one other little thing. Once upon a time, I was lucky enough to get gifted a trip to Lake Powell, and I was in a little slot canyon, and it was the first time in my life in a long time I had been completely in a silent environment. I literally couldn't hear anything. And boy, did it reset my thinking about what it means to be in a world of quiet. Without that reset, I wouldn't have noticed how noisy my world when I came back was. Now, I've forgotten some of that, but I do think there's some value in the taking it away from yourself so that you can, when you go back, start to notice how much it's affecting your life.
I agree with you, Bill. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because I know all of this. Of course we do. We all know this. What is both challenging and interesting to me is the way we behave despite knowing this, and how technology really is like a drug. I mean, it has real addictive properties. I couldn't tell you what they are, whether it's the screen or the light or the FOMO or whatever it is, but that really is something that I think is sort of changing society.
I think it's dopamine.
Yeah.
I think you get
A
that
little
little
while
hit
ago,
when
my,
somebody likes your comment.
Yeah.
A
And
little while ago,
right,
my
the
son
liking
asked
of
me
comments
if-
also. Sure. Sorry, Dave.
if we had more pictures of him, and I had to tell him, look, I was not in the habit of having you pose for me all the time. So no, I have the pictures I have, and you've seen them all. They're all in the book I gave you. And the ones since you've been to Japan, I haven't taken a picture of you except when I visit now. But it's really funny that he actually noticed that he didn't have a lot of pictures of himself. Everybody else has got hundreds, but not this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and yet, these tools, these phones, these computers keep us connected. They keep us connected to one another, and it's amazing, the friendships that have been born, the connections that have been made. And that's really what I want to dig into with you today. I want to, before we even do that, though, I just want to say hello to Gary, who's watching on YouTube. Happy spring to you. And Hershey is there. Brediverse, good to see you. Anyone who's watching, feel free, say hi in the chat. We'd love to say hello to you. But let's talk a little bit about human connection and technology, the pros, the cons. What is your sense of the state of friendship, of human connection? On balance, are we better off? Let's use the pandemic as a turning point, because I think that while certainly we were using technologies before, there has been a monumental shift since the pandemic.
Brought it into focus.
Yeah, so let's use that as a turning point. Is human connection better off post-pandemic or pre-pandemic? Bill and Tony, go for it.
Yes, both cases, it is better off and it is far worse off depending on how you came through it, in my opinion. I see in my life, it is so much easier to stay connected to people that I know. Once you get into social media thing and you have an old high school friend and you connect once, the pathway now is preserved so that you can get back to them should you choose to, which means that you're no longer drifting away unless both parties decide you want to drift away. On the other side, there's a young man who's, I think, 22 and where I live over here that I've been talking to him a lot. And he was 4 years ago, obviously in his late teens, high school time, and got disrupted from all of that. And I do notice with him, and what I'm talking to him, is that he seems less connected to friend groups than I think I was at his age. And I do think the pandemic and that disassociation of school for a year and a half, I think it's had a profound effect on him. And that period when he should have been forming those relationships, the post-high school relationships, he missed it. And I can see it. He's a great kid, and I believe he's going to be okay, but I worry for his peers in that generation.
Yeah, I really don't even know where to start when it comes to this whole thing. I think I shared last night on Conversation with Tony Mobley that the reason that you are able to see me as I am right now is because last year I was totally incapacitated. I was bedridden. And my friend, who I met through social media or Zoom office hours, Clyde Lopez Waterman, came to my house, moved all of my equipment into the room that I am in now that had my hospital bed in it. He put the TV up. He put the stand that the TV is on. He brought in all my equipment, and I got 3 major big lights. I have 5 monitors. I have 3 computers, this microphone, ATEM Mini, Stream Deck, Zoom H6, tons and tons of stuff. He took his time. He drove from North Carolina to Georgia to put all of this in place. Now, would I have met all of you were it not for this medium that we are participating in right now?
Yeah.
All over the world. I've had Dr. Hasma Gaijar, Cape Town, South Africa, my first guest on my show. I have meaningful interactions with people that are all over the world. I've had Liberty White at my house several times. I've had lunch with Roscoe Jones. Clara Lopez has traveled with me to a little town in Macon, Georgia, helped with a church production at a theater in Macon, Georgia. My church, a small church, has a YouTube stream that they broadcast, and they have had interaction with people all over the world.
Mhm.
So yes, this is a good thing. And then finally, I want to say this. Were it not for this medium for interaction, I would have been isolated through my last 6 years. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was dealing with cancer. Then after that, it was something else. Then after that, it was something else. And most of last year, I was out in terms of being actually interactive. But for the most part, during those 6 years, 5 of those years, I can say that I have continued to interact with my friends. I have still continued to get support. So from where I sit, this is a fantastic thing. And I'm so thankful that I live in a time where I can utilize it.
I just want to highlight, and I'll come over to you, Leo. I just want to highlight, Tony, that in order for you to get the most out of the long distance digital connections that you've made, it took a it took Tlaloc coming to your home. That's just quite profound to me. The intersection of one human being going into another, traveling, as you said, going to another human being's home to allow you to then make much longer distance and much broader and wider. It struck me. Go ahead, Leo. Sorry.
Sometimes you feel when Tony talks that you want to unscrew your mic and do the mic drop yourself afterwards, because his answers at the end. Very similar sort of conversation on there. The point I was going to say is, you mentioned a couple of people there. You mentioned Hasmukh. I've flown out to South Africa, met him. I've flown to Miami, and I've met David. I've met a number of other people on here through that communication that started through the online environment. I think what the online environment does is it enables you to move, and the communication and the connections, to make connections with people that have similar experiences, or not experiences, but have similar ways of working. And I think that's what it has enabled, and what we all sat there. It is 5 years ago this week that the UK locked down, and we're sitting there now 5 years later, and learning about the things that the people that we met through that period of time. And I think that's where it's worked. However, and I think you mentioned it just there as well, David, what it enabled me then to do to further those relationships is, and I don't think you can ever better it, is you have to actually sit down and meet these people in person.
Yeah. There's research that says that young people, teens, only 25% of teens are regularly spending time with friends in person daily, as opposed to 55% of teens who are texting or doing it online. And I think one of the real questions is do relationships that are exclusively online, do they have the same depth that a face-to-face, a real person relationship does? Dave, you don't think they do? And then I'll come over to you, Tamara.
Yeah. For me, the whole idea of friendship is about what you're prepared to do for another person. So what Tony said is exactly friendship. That's where a person just comes and helps with that. Online friendships have little opportunity to do that. We can talk each other through something, but we're not getting the emotion done. We're not getting the what I know of as limbic resonance, which is two brains recognizing each other without words. And the sense we talked earlier, that a person being interviewed in 2 minutes, 5 minutes for my friend, can tell whether or not this is a legitimate person who can contribute to what we're trying to do. And communities of interest form around common interests. But during the pandemic, um, it did in fact open windows to other people. And the wonderful thing, and Leo said the same thing, now I can go to Miami and there are people there. I have a sense of what they are, who they are, and I'm willing to go and do something for them. I was traveling to Vancouver last summer and I knew I could stop in with Alexander Knight. And I know where Port Coquitlam is, so I can go there. And I drove over and we had a wonderful evening, but it was mostly me helping him. We redid all his lighting because I use a light meter and I know color temperature and I'm that kind of guy. I'm a lighting director. So I come in, I see he's got like 14 lamps, doesn't need them all. And we cut them all off until he had the perfect picture and everything's fine. But the key thing there is now I have a connection with Alexander from one evening that I'm going to have for a very long time. The only time I've had a totally only digital connection, it lasted 40 years. Now, our guy died actually in the first month of the pandemic, and I lost the guy. But for 40 years, we were friends on the internet back from started in CompuServe and made it all the way up to FaceTime. And the first time we actually did one of these face-to-faces was when FaceTime was invented, and we wanted to try it out. So I've had a friend over in Quebec, but I haven't had a chance to help him, not at all. So I don't see that as a connection yet until I'm able to help.
So I was definitely struggling at the top of the pandemic in ways that I have never had in my life. I was in Los Angeles where I grew up, working on a job where I was not having a good time. And one of the things about friendship isn't just in person, it is multiple shared experiences. And one of the cultural oddities of Los Angeles, which I say this having grown up here, I'm bi-coastal now, I'm New York and Los Angeles. But one of the things about Los Angeles is that the culture here is, I will say, hey, Lois, let's go and have coffee. And then I will look at my calendar and I will say, okay, let me flip through that. I'm like, how is April 14th? And then Lois will look through her calendar and go, I don't have April 14th, but I have April 28th. And we go, okay, great. We're going to go to April 28th. And the day comes. And even though I love Lois and I can't wait to see her, the immediate thing in my day is the same that's happening to her is like, oh, I hope Lois cancels because I had no idea what my life was going to be like on the 28th. And so I have friends who I've known forever. I cannot get on their calendar in real life, which is completely different from the New York personality. Because New York, I could get off the subway in a station that I've never been in, run into someone and be like, hey, we should have coffee. And they're like, what are you doing at 4 o'clock? I'm going to be over there. And it's a same day experience. And having shared multiple experiences together is what helps solidify friendship. So for me, this digital space allowed for shared experiences. I've had it in this community. I've had it in a writers community that started May of the pandemic. I've had it in a theater community where everybody was doing, when I was in New York, I couldn't go and see people in person because my show was running or their show was running. And we're now 5 years into this where not only have multiple shared experiences in a digital space, but then they have leaked into real life because we have multiple shared experiences together. And that was not happening in real life on its own.
How do you make sure that those experiences and the spaces that we're creating to allow for those experiences to happen, how do you make sure that those aren't superficial? What do we do? What can we do to make sure that, because we're not just the folks who show up and have connections in digital space. We're the folks who create the environments for those to happen. So what does it take to make those authentic and not superficial? Lois, can I get you in here? But you got to unmute yourself again.
I've got to unmute myself all the time. I just do. Uh, the experiences that I had before the pandemic were going to the senior center all the time, doing art shows, doing, all these in-person things. And there's an exercise group and all this stuff. Everything shut down. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I'm me. So I'm going to learn how to do whatever the new thing is, in this case, Zoom. And then I'm going to turn around and teach everybody I can find how to do it. So the exercise group, the genealogy club, whatever it was, it just it just shifted. Uh, I'm still talking with people. I'm still helping people, but it's different people because we are now limited to people who have the ability and the resources to use that technology that was new. And so what I found in during the pandemic is that my uh my interaction with people was deeper, was more, but there were fewer people. And it was sort of a self-limiting group. It used to be I would walk down the street and I would meet someone and I would talk to them, and I had no idea who they were going to be, but I met them. Now I know that the person I'm meeting is someone who has technology, who has money, who has somebody to teach them how to do it.
Interesting. Interesting.
I've also changed my in-person rules. I really, if I'm meeting with you, it's because I care about you. You are on my short list because I do not take superficial meetings in person anymore. I won't drive just to do coffee randomly. I'll do a Zoom meeting and create those relationships and create those before, because my personal time, my in-person time is so valuable that I want to make sure that those connections are valuable as well.
Yeah. Tony, you want to jump in?
Yes, a couple of things. Uh, I was listening to a conversation from a megachurch pastor recently, and he was having this conversation with a much younger minister, a much younger pastor, and they were talking about um, building of sanctuaries, and this conversation was going back and forth, and the elder pastor, and he wasn't as old as I am, but he was an elder pastor in terms of how long he had been at the church, and they were talking about their ministry, and the elder pastor asked the younger pastor about this whole idea of, are your contemporaries talking about building new edifices? Um, and these were megachurch pastors, and they were having this dialogue. And the younger pastor said, "No, we're not doing that." And he said that if you are in a ministry and you do not have a component of virtual ministry that is authentic, then you have failed. And so I'm not here to argue about whether or not what they were saying was accurate. What I am saying though is that the senior pastor said that we have 8,000 members that attend church regularly. And then he said we have 40,000 that tune in virtually. And he said that the reason that they have 40,000 people that tune in virtually was because they are prepared to minister to that group. So it really is a matter of being authentic and prepared to work with those people that you want to interact with. So I think that's sort of key to, even when you talk about small groups, it's about the authenticness of the conversation and the interaction.
Hmm.
You know, Lois made a comment about wealth. I am not a wealthy person financially. When I come into my inheritance, then I'm a wealthy person. But right now, I'm not a wealthy person. But I will say that because of the authentic relationships that I have formed with people online, I have a PR40 microphone, not something that I could afford. I'm using a teleprompter. It's $1,000 teleprompter, not something that I could afford. And I can go around this setup and talk about multiple things that I have that are not in my budget. And the reason that I mention this is not so to brag, but I mention it because the interactions that I had with these people, they saw that I had a need. And because they saw that I had a need, they wanted to help me. Now, what do I do with the gifts that have been given to me? One of the things that I do is that I push for wherever I am and whatever context that I'm in, whether it be with the church service, with the Tony Mobley conversations, whether it's Facebook, wherever it is, I'm pushing for the authentic conversation. And I'm also pushing for, Lois, hear me now, so that whatever I'm doing, it is useful or beneficial to a person who may be just on a phone. So when I'm interacting with my members of the church and we're doing our services and that kind of thing, I'm saying constantly, how does this look to someone who is only looking at it from a phone?
Oh, Leo.
Because that might be all that they have.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that this idea of authentic interaction is able to go forward.
It has to translate. Yeah. To where your audience is. Absolutely. Leo, and then Bill, I wanna get you in here.
Yeah.
It's always difficult following Tony. It
Why
always
do you
is.
always have
But
to
I
be
don't
the
do it.
one? Yeah.
I know.
Hey, go ahead.
There's a few things I'd like to just really quickly or try and quickly unpack. The first thing is that why this is working is because we have physical visual communication. And I think when you remove the physical visual communication, the ability for bad agents to infiltrate and to utilize things has happened. There's a big story in the news in the UK at the moment about a system where men in particular or teenage kids are being exploited, pictures taken, and then they're being held for ransom they think they're talking to young girls online, and they've proven that literally it's all being done from somewhere else, and it's very, very, very easy when you don't have that physical connection from here to make that that happen. So I think that's one of the key points, that when you talk about the positives and the negatives, when you're seeing and you're able to actually physically be involved with somebody, it works much better. It works much better, as we've already talked about, the fact that from my perspective, I see this as a gateway to being able to, where I can, to meet with people. And so I see that this has enabled that to happen. The last thing I would say, and going back to Tony, is I don't think anybody's gifted you anything, Tony. I think people they are amazed at what you do, and they are in their way contributing how they can to make it happen. It's not a gift.
Mhm.
It's not a gift. It's a thank you in a different way for what you are doing, which is just unbelievable. And that's why people are doing it. And I think if you sit there, you could argue that you go to the cinema and it's a gift that you're paying. It's not a gift. You're rewarding and thanking the people for what you're doing. And that's why I think it's so easy for people to step up when you're involved, Tony.
Beautiful. Bill, you have spent the most time, I think, of anybody here on office hours as a reader, as a host, I mean, almost every day for years.
Yeah.
What are
It's been a
those
long time.
connections that you've made like?
They are surprising in every way that it is possible to surprise. And when David, when you were asking the original question, the two words that jumped into my mind was emotional authenticity. And Tony has mentioned authenticity, and I think that's very important. But there's also emotional vulnerability. That's what I think deepens relationships, is when you tell other people not just the surface stuff that you want the world to think about you. That's a little ego driven. You want everybody to think you're successful and smart and all the rest of those things. It's only when you get to, here's what's not working for me, and I'm sharing this to you in confidence because I need help from you and I would like you to hear from me, and maybe there'll be something that clicks that helps you. That's when relationships truly deepen. And the difficult thing about that is that we're doing that on a medium like this, and we don't know who's watching. We don't know who we're being vulnerable to. It's one thing to do it across the table in a cup of coffee in a coffee shop. You can let your world out, and the risk is low. Do that same thing here, the risk gets higher. And you go out on a worldwide broadcast, and it's very high. And I do see the people who manipulate people a lot have become very good at getting into that emotional space, making them feel like this connection is true and reasonable, when in fact, it is not at all.
Can I play devil's
And
advocate for a moment?
sure, go for, oh, yes, please.
Because I actually feel like, for me at least, it is much easier to be vulnerable here. Precisely because I can't see the audience to which I'm being vulnerable.
Right, but I think, yes, but all of us too have self-selected into being the kind of people who are happy to open up a camera into our lives and sit in front of the camera and tell you who we are.
Yeah.
And most people in the world do not do that.
That's
And I
true.
was actually thinking, when Tony was talking about for services and things like that, I was thinking, yeah, it'd be great if there was more outreaches to put those cameras in the people who are struggling and let them communicate and let them connect. But we've all been there too, to the point where sometimes that connection is so desperately needed that they will take up every moment of your time. And how do you manage that for 10 people, let alone 10,000 people, and legitimately care about a mass audience? Is that even rationally possible?
I was honored to go to Elevation Church. Is are they out of Atlanta, Tony? Elevation? I think they are, actually.
I think they are.
Yeah, I think they are
I'm
too.
not absolutely sure.
So I'm a big fan. I mean, yeah, the rabbi goes to church, but I'm a big fan of their pastor and their music and everything. And I signed up actually so that I could go to their some of their online. I'm not sure what they call them. Forgive me. It's their online clergy, I guess you would say, at meetings. They have they have teams of people whose job is to pastor to the folks who are watching online, engaging with them, interacting with them, both synchronously when the service is going, but also asynchronously, catching up with them on Facebook or whatever the platforms are that they're using. I mean, it is a job and a half to nurture those relationships, I think.
I love that though.
And I do too. And I'll tell you
love
that my temple, just by way of example, and don't get me wrong, I love the temple I work at. They don't do that at all. Not at all. They're still in web barely 2.0, right? I mean, they're still just throwing information out and hoping that it's that deep, connective, interactive work is so vital, I think. And not enough people are doing it.
I'm going to defer to Lois.
So what I wanted to, it's sort of a little aside here. One of the big differences when I'm on a Zoom call, and I use meetings rather than webinars. So whoever's in the audience is there. There's a little face there, whether it's whether
Mhm.
there's 10 of us or there's, 200 of us, but we can see each other. And the difference I see is when I would be unassuming and in the background and overhearing other people in real time, in real life. I can't do that on Zoom because
Mhm.
I'm always there. Now I might look away, but you and I are always looking at each other, and we can talk to each other. And you're not going to overhear me talking to someone else because it isn't how it works. And so I think that the interactions that I have are more forward and less mm, sitting in the corner and hearing all the people talking, but not being
Yeah.
able to participate.
That's really fascinating, Lois. There are not necessarily as many um, uh, happenstance
Mhm.
meetings.
Yeah.
And Zoom has what is it called? Zoom huddles, right? They have an app that I guess tries to sort of replicate that water cooler experience. Um, as I've said many times before, because I have no friends in my org, I can't use huddles because it's me. There's no one to, and it only works within an org. But I also want to just bring up Lois because you brought up another really important point, and that is what we're doing. What anyone does in a Zoom meeting, being face forward to a number of other people, is incredibly taxing
Yeah.
on the brain, I think, and even looking at ourselves is incredibly taxing on the brain. So there's a lot in these technologies that actually can make it really difficult to be able to sustain attention or sustain connectivity or all
Mhm.
of that. And we as the creators of opportunities for connection have to bear that in mind and have to not only think about, as Tony, as you said, what are the not what are all the fancy tools that I have, but what are the tools that my audience or
Right.
my partner or my friend or my coworker has, but also bear in mind that it's not easy what we're doing here, staring at all these faces, knowing that you're on camera constantly, that it is more of a formal sort of relationship.
And
Mhm.
and it's not easy to connect with you outside of this meeting. I know
Yeah,
Tamara. I have no idea what her phone number is.
right.
I can't call her. I can't write to her. I don't have an
Right.
address. Um, so the only connection I have is to drop in and hope that she's going to be there.
Yeah.
And that's not real. I mean, in real life, I would just phone somebody up and say, "Hey, do you want to have a Zoom meeting?" Great, because
Right.
I can get to you. But a lot of the connections here online are not replicable
Mm,
outside the massive meeting.
that's
I think you
interesting.
you bring up a really interesting point too that we are seeing with young people, because young people started out in this Zoom medium, and when they go into like the office, or we get them, when I get them at the theater, they don't have that same point of reference of just sitting and listening and putting value in those conversations that happen in the break room, or conversations that happen that are not part of work. And I think that that's a real disadvantage, that there's a real social anxiety that I see with the young people that even in the theater, these are kids who wanted to do theater. And, we have to really manufacture a lot of the, modeling how that happens for these kids, because they don't have that point of reference. And there's a valuable point to, I love working from home. It's allowed me to, take care of my mom and to really, deal with some of the, pressures of being a caregiver and someone who is still active in her career. But I really do think that there's something missing about being in the office, and I don't think it's some of the things that they say it is. I don't think that people work harder at the office. I work way more at home than I ever did in an office, but I think those little places where you listen to other people or you meet people that you wouldn't normally meet, in real life, those things are definitely missing.
By the way, I also just want to throw in here, Lois, I think it was you that mentioned webinars. I have never, ever, nor will I ever produce a webinar because for the exact reason that you said, is that to my mind, If and you hinted this also, Tamara, if I'm going to make the time to meet with you, to learn with you, I want it to be with you. I want to see your face, even if you don't speak. I want, and I want you to know that you're there and that it matters to me that you're there. I want you to know that it matters to me that you're there. And if you know as the participant that you're not seen and that you can hide from the chat, you don't have to put anything in the chat. Then it doesn't even matter. It almost doesn't matter if you're there. And I want people to know that it matters that they're there.
And yet you stream. You send it out to YouTube where all these people can see you. You can't see them. You don't know who's there.
Absolutely. You're right.
I think that's where
he's not calling them friends.
Yeah, I think that's where having Discord and other places to meet up outside of this is also valuable. That's where other conversations continue to grow. I do think there's limitations, but I also am, I am kind of such an optimist about this, about this medium. In the same way that I was an optimist about IRC, I met one of my very best friends through text. We were not, we were in a like group. We're still, friends. I think we've celebrated our 30th friendversary or 30 some odd plus. But, so I just have always found friendship in this very strange medium and kind of grew up with it. But so I understand the value of both. But I do think that you're right. It's no different, though, than we often call friends who are really acquaintances. And that is something that, you talk about your friend at the office. They're not your friend. They're the person that you see in the office.
Your
so
Facebook
in a lot
friend.
of your Facebook friend. There's lots of people who we've utilized the word friend in such a, in such a kind of loose and goosey way. But I really feel like for me, I've been able to take friendships and watch people blossom and deepen and grow. But that also, it takes nurturing in the same way that a regular friendship takes nurturing. It isn't something that, it just happens magically. You're not going to be best friends with every single person you're in a meeting with, just like you wouldn't be friends with every single person that you work with in a big corporation. So I think there's something to be taken from all of the ways that we interact.
So
are we asking too much too soon of this? This is a 5-year-old phenomenon, and we've only been doing this for a year or so. We're in the infancy. If this was television, this would be black and white.
I've been doing this. I've been doing this for 15 years. So
well, I know you have, David. And I honor that because I do think that there's a lot known about it. But this interactivity, this assembling the little town hall and letting anybody in the world who wants to participate coming in, is a new thing that I think we're all wrapping our heads, just like social media is roiling through kids. And I remember my son, who is in his 30s now, when he was young, they had no idea. The schools weren't helping him. The parents didn't know enough to help him. He was out there on the leading edge as a pioneer. And the old joke about arrows in the back. Yeah, he took arrows in the back because nobody knew how to police any of it. And I'm wondering if as this evolves, if we'll get better at understanding how to manage this.
Yeah.
I think we will. I think we will, but
Leo,
also...
I just want to say, hold on. I'm coming right to you, but I'm coming to you because were we all together physically in the room, you would have traveled the farthest. So I'm giving you the last word, Leo.
What? Hey.
Well,
I'm giving you the last word, then I'm giving Dave the last word.
Okay. All right.
The last word. Final.
Go ahead.
I think what's amazing with everything, with people, is that we adapt. We adapted to this came out. We've adapted to various different things. I love what Tamara was talking about when she was saying about ICQ, IRC, and all of those other things that were out a long, long time ago. And we adapt to these things. However, and this is the bit for me, is the adaptation only means that it gives me an opportunity to then eventually meet people. And I think that's the important bit. And I don't think you can ever take that away. For a human connection, actually, even is made as much as you can do on this, it changes, perceptively changes when you sit in a room with somebody.
Absolutely.
And I've done that with a number of people. I can't remember how many, but it's at
There's
least 15 to
chemistry.
20
There
people
is
that
chemistry
I've met
involved.
through
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I would continue doing it.
Yeah. Dave, take us home.
That chemistry is the result of mirror neurons operating with limbic resonance.
Okay. Well, now
It's
you're
a kind
just
of
ruining it.
brain-to-brain connection.
Now you're just
but-
ruining it.
Yeah, but social control is done through social interactions. We teach each other how to behave with each other by interacting with each other and getting push and pull and drawn in. The other thing I want to follow up is way back when Tony was talking about authentic, the whole world runs on trust. Everything, money, driving, getting in an airplane, it's all trust. We trust a lot of things. And one of the things we've learned as humans is the only way to survive is to get together with other people you can trust. Now, compassion is directly related to that we experience other people's lives through that exposure. And that's, as Bill said, letting yourself be vulnerable to other people. And then you find out they'll be vulnerable to you. We know the effects of social isolation because it's predated technology. It used to be shunning people or leaving them in the woods and finding their way back home. But this brain-to-brain connection thing is what's missing in technology because it's a lot like writing letters. You can compose them and then you have to wait for the answer. When we get this immediate feedback stuff, we're believing that it's a closer connection, but it's not. I'm totally with Leo. It's a doorway or a window to other people. And if you want to follow up on it, as Harshit has done with me, and as I have done with Peter Belbin when he was here at Christmas, we just get a little bit of time together and it solidifies the whole experience. So we've done that in the workplace, we've done that on the street, and we do that with our community leagues and our groups of common interest. HO trains get people together to talk about trains, and it's just the same. So yes, the talking and the seeing and everything else is getting much better, but we're never going to get to the point where it's a limbic resonance. That's not going to happen through the stream.
Yeah. And yet,
I'll tie a bow on the whole thing.
And yet, here we are enjoying each other's company, learning from each other, and I'm so grateful to all of you for spending this time with me. Thank you so much. And to those of you who are watching online, you don't have to just be out there when we don't know who's there. You can join us here if you want. Hop on over to the Discord. Just go to the rundown.show. You can find links to the Discord, the YouTube. Reach out to me. Let me know you'd like to come to the panel. We'd love to have you. And as always, wishing all of you a fantastic rest of your night, a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next week on The Rundown.